The heat inside Lumpini Stadium clings to the skin like wet cloth. Bangkok, August 1972. Nearly 3,000 people fill the wooden bleachers. Sweat mixes with cigarette smoke. The sharp scent of tiger balm and liniment floats through the thick tropical air. Under 4 harsh floodlights, the ring canvas glows pale and worn from years of combat. This is not just another fight night. This is Lumpini, the most sacred Muay Thai arena in Thailand. Fighters from across Asia dream of standing here. Champions are made here. Reputations are destroyed here. And tonight, standing alone under the lights is a man who has never lost. Chachai Sor Prasert. The announcer's voice echoes through the stadium. 82 professional fights. 82 victories. The crowd roars with pride. Chachai raises his arms slowly. His body looks carved from iron. Thick shoulders, scarred shins hardened by years of kicking banana trees until the bark split open. The Mungkon headband rests across his forehead, blessed by monks earlier that morning. He is 28 years old, 5'11", 168 pounds, and he has knocked out 39 men. People call him the Hammer of Asan, because when his strikes land, things break. Tonight was supposed to be simple. An exhibition. Foreign journalists sit in the front row with notebooks and cameras. Tourists lean forward with excitement. Promoters want to show the world the power of Muay Thai. But Chachai has another idea. He takes the microphone from the announcer. The stadium quiets. His voice is calm but confident. If anyone here believes their style is stronger than Muay Thai, he pauses. Come prove it. The crowd erupts in laughter. Some clap. Others shout encouragement. The translators repeat his words in English for the tourists. Any style. Karate, kung fu, boxing. He smiles slightly. Or any brave man. The laughter grows louder. The promoter climbs through the ropes looking uneasy. Champions do not usually challenge strangers. Too risky. Too unpredictable. But Chachai nods firmly. He means it. The promoter sighs and raises the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, our champion invites a volunteer from the audience for a friendly sparring demonstration. The words ripple through the crowd. 3,000 people suddenly become very interested in the floor. Nobody wants to volunteer. Everyone knows what 82 victories really means. Pain. Broken ribs. Knockouts. Chachai steps through the ropes and drops down to the arena floor. That alone causes a stir. Champions rarely leave the ring, but tonight he walks slowly along the aisle between the bleachers, scanning faces. Fighters avoid eye contact. Tourists pretend to look at their cameras. Gamblers suddenly focus on their betting slips. Chachai studies them carefully. Too old, too drunk, too nervous. Then his eyes stop. Row 14, seat 6. A small man sits quietly among the crowd. Black shirt, dark slacks. No cheering, no drinking. Just watching, still, calm, almost detached from the noise around him. Something about him feels different. The man's eyes follow the movement inside the arena like someone studying a puzzle. Chachai tilts his head slightly. He cannot explain why, but he points directly at him. You. The entire section turns. At first, people don't notice anything unusual. Just a thin Chinese man slowly standing up. Maybe 5'7", about 140 pounds. No visible muscles, no training gear. He looks like an office worker who wandered into the wrong building. The laughter begins immediately. Oh no, poor guy. He's going to die. A tourist whispers loudly. That man is finished. The small man walks down the steps calmly. No hesitation. No fear. Just smooth, relaxed movement. Someone grabs his arm. You don't have to do this. The man smiles politely. It's all right. As he approaches the ring, the laughter grows louder. Inside the ropes, Chachai watches closely now. The way this man walks feels unusual, balanced, loose, like someone who understands movement. The man climbs the steps and ducks through the ropes. Under the bright lights, his face becomes clear. The promoter hands him a microphone. "Sir, what is your name?" The man answers quietly, "Bruce Lee." The name means nothing to most people in the stadium, just another visitor. The promoter asks another question. "Do you practice martial arts?" Bruce nods slightly. "Yes, what style?" "Wing Chun." The promoter frowns. "Never heard of it." Chachai laughs and says something in Thai that makes the crowd roar. The translator repeats it. The champion asks if that is a movie style. More laughter. Bruce Lee simply smiles and says nothing. But something about that silence makes the champion uneasy, because men who are afraid usually talk. They explain, they protest, they joke. This man does none of those things. He just stands there, relaxed, watching, almost like a teacher observing a student. The referee steps between them. "Light sparring only," he says in broken English. "No elbow break, no knee kill." Both men nod. They touch gloves. The bell rings, and within the first 2 seconds, something strange happens. Chachai throws a fast jab, a simple test. Bruce Lee isn't there. He moved before the punch even began. The crowd laughs again. They assume it was luck. But Chachai does not laugh, because fighters can feel the difference between luck and timing. And that movement just now felt deliberate. For the first time that evening, the champion narrows his eyes, and the laughter in Lumpini Stadium begins to fade. Chachai resets his stance. He tells himself it was nothing, just distance, just a lucky movement. The crowd is still amused. A few gamblers shout from the upper rows, "Stop playing with him! Kick him!" The champion nods slightly. Fine. If the crowd wants a demonstration, he will give them one. He steps forward again. This time the jab is not a test. It snaps forward fast, followed instantly by a cross and a low kick aimed at Bruce's thigh. A classic Muay Thai combination. Jab, cross, kick. 3 strikes that have knocked down dozens of opponents. The jab flies first. Bruce tilts his head slightly. The glove cuts through empty air. The cross comes next. Bruce shifts his weight just enough. Another miss. Then the kick whips toward his leg. Bruce lifts his shin. The kick slides harmlessly off. The entire exchange happens in less than a second. The crowd murmurs, not impressed yet, but curious. Chachai pulls back. Now he studies the man more carefully. This is no tourist, no drunk volunteer. The way he moved, it was efficient. Nothing wasted. The champion circles slowly. He decides to test distance. His foot shoots forward with a teep kick, Muay Thai's famous push kick. It drives straight toward Bruce's stomach. The technique is designed to shove opponents backward and control the fight. Bruce doesn't retreat. Instead, his palm touches the shin lightly. Not a block. A guide. The kick slides past his body. Chachai's foot lands awkwardly beside him. For a brief moment, his balance shifts. Bruce's hand rises near the champion's chest, not striking. Just there. Then gone again. The champion freezes for half a heartbeat. The message is subtle but clear. Bruce Lee could have struck and chose not to. The crowd begins whispering. Something strange is happening. The champion attacks again. This time faster. Punch, elbow, low kick. A burst of violence that usually overwhelms opponents. Bruce moves like water. A small pivot. A shift of shoulders. A step to the side. Every strike misses by inches. 30 seconds pass. Chachai has thrown nearly 10 techniques. None have landed clean. The laughter inside the stadium disappears. Now the audience leans forward. 3,000 people trying to understand what they're watching. In the front row, a journalist lowers his camera. "Who is that man?" he whispers. Back in the ring, the champion feels irritation rising. 82 fights built his reputation. Men normally panic after the first combination. This man looks relaxed, almost bored. Bruce finally speaks. His voice is calm. "You are very fast." The translator repeats it in Thai. The compliment is sincere, but something about it frustrates Chachai even more, because praise from someone you cannot hit feels strange. The champion decides to stop testing. He launches forward with one of his most devastating techniques, the flying knee. His feet leave the canvas. The knee rockets toward Bruce's chest like a spear. The crowd gasps. This move has ended fights instantly. But Bruce Lee does something unexpected. He steps forward, not away. Inside the attack, his hand touches the champion's thigh mid-air, just enough to redirect the angle. Chachai lands awkwardly, half a step off balance, and in that tiny moment, Bruce Lee could end everything. A punch, a sweep, a strike to the throat. But he does nothing. He simply steps back, waiting. Now the stadium is completely silent. 3,000 people realize something at the same time. The undefeated champion has not landed a single strike. 90 seconds pass. Chachai breathes heavier. Bruce does not. The champion studies him again. Those eyes, calm, focused, not reacting, predicting. And suddenly Chachai understands something terrifying. He is not chasing a man. He is chasing a moment that has already passed. Still, a champion cannot stop now. Not in front of 3,000 witnesses, so he attacks again. Punches. Kicks. Elbows. Everything. A storm of Muay Thai violence. Bruce Lee moves through it like mist. Nothing connects. The audience sits frozen. Then Bruce stops retreating. Just for a moment. Chachai throws another hook. Bruce slips inside. His hand rises. Fast, direct, precise, and stops 1 inch from the champion's face. The famous straight punch. Perfectly aligned. Close enough to break bone. But it never lands. The referee immediately rushes forward. Stop. The bell rings. The demonstration is over. The entire stadium is silent. Because everyone understands what just happened. That punch would have landed first. Bruce slowly lowers his hand, then bows. Respectfully. No celebration. No arrogance. Just quiet control. And suddenly, the crowd erupts. Not cheering for victory, but for something rarer. Mastery. For several seconds, nobody moves. The referee stands between them, unsure what to say. The champion is still staring at the space where Bruce Lee's fist had stopped, 1 inch. That is all the distance that separated demonstration from destruction. Chachai breathes slowly, chest rising and falling. Sweat runs down his face, but his eyes are no longer angry. They are thoughtful, because fighters understand something spectators often miss. Distance never lies. And the distance he just saw meant one thing. The other man had already won the exchange. Bruce steps back respectfully and bows again. No celebration. No smile. Just acknowledgement. The stadium remains silent for another moment, and then applause begins. First from the back rows, then from the gamblers, then from the journalists. Within seconds, the entire arena erupts. Not the roar of victory. Something different. Recognition. The promoter climbs back into the ring, clearly unsure how to handle what just happened. He raises the microphone with nervous laughter. "Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was certainly an interesting demonstration." The crowd chuckles, but most of their attention is still on the two men standing quietly in the center of the ring. Chachai steps forward. For a moment, it looks like he might speak. Instead, he bows, deeply, much deeper than a normal Muay Thai gesture. Bruce immediately bows back. Equal respect. The promoter turns to the champion. "What do you think of your opponent?" Chachai answers in Thai. The translator listens carefully before repeating the words into the microphone. The champion says, "This man is not an amateur." Some laughter ripples through the crowd, but Chachai continues speaking. The translator nods again. He says, if that punch had continued forward, the fight would already be over. Now the audience grows quiet again, because the champion himself has confirmed what everyone sensed. Bruce Lee could have ended it. The promoter turns toward Bruce. "Mr. Lee, why didn't you strike?" Bruce looks at the champion first, then answers calmly, "This was not a fight." Pause. "It was a lesson." The translator repeats the sentence in Thai. A murmur spreads through the arena. Chachai studies him carefully now. No arrogance, no ego, just calm certainty. The champion asks another question through the translator. "What style is that movement?" Bruce thinks for a moment, then answers, "No style." The translator hesitates. "No style?" Bruce smiles slightly. "Or every style?" The crowd laughs softly, unsure what he means, but several fighters sitting near the ring exchange thoughtful looks. Because they understand, Bruce Lee has not demonstrated a new technique. He has demonstrated freedom. Freedom from rigid patterns. Freedom from predictable reactions. Freedom to adapt to whatever the moment demands. Bruce steps toward the ropes and climbs out of the ring quietly. No interviews, no speeches. He simply returns to his seat beside Dan Inosanto. Dan exhales slowly. "I thought you weren't going to accept the challenge." Bruce shrugs. "She chose me. And you just embarrassed the most famous Muay Thai fighter in Bangkok." Bruce shakes his head. "No." He glances back toward the ring where Chachai is still standing silently. "I showed him something." Dan folds his arms. "You made him miss everything." Bruce smiles faintly. "That happens in sparring." Dan laughs. "No, that does not happen." Bruce doesn't argue. Instead, he watches the champion climb through the ropes and disappear toward the locker room. Dan finally asks the question he has been thinking about since the fight began. "You could have knocked him out." Bruce nods. "Yes. So why stop?" Bruce answers quietly. "Because winning was never the point." Dan studies him. "Then what was the point?" Bruce leans back slightly in his seat. "The point was understanding." The stadium slowly begins returning to normal. The next scheduled fight prepares to start. But something in the air has changed. Fighters in the crowd whisper to each other. Some are confused, others are fascinated. A few look inspired because they witnessed something rare. A moment where technique, timing, and restraint existed together. And that combination is far harder to achieve than victory. The crowd begins to leave Lumpini slowly that night. Outside the stadium, the Bangkok air is still heavy with heat. Food vendors light small charcoal stoves. Motorbikes buzz through the narrow streets. Neon signs flicker above noodle stalls and crowded sidewalks. Bruce Lee and Dan Inosanto step out into the humid night. For a moment, neither of them speaks. Behind them, the noise of the stadium fades into the distance. Dan finally exhales. "You know they're going to talk about that for years." Bruce glances back briefly at the glowing lights of Lumpini Stadium. "People always talk." Dan shakes his head. "No, this is different." They walk along the sidewalk while street vendors shout to passing tourists. "You made him miss everything." Bruce smiles slightly. He was very skilled. Dan stops walking. "Very skilled? He's the best Muay Thai champion in Thailand." Bruce nods. "Yes. And you made him look like a beginner." Bruce shakes his head again. "No. Pause. I showed him something." Dan folds his arms. "You keep saying that. What exactly did you show him?" Bruce watches a motorbike pass before answering. "The moment." Dan raises an eyebrow. "The moment?" Bruce continues walking. Most fighters react after the attack begins. Dan nods slowly. That's normal. Bruce smiles. But the moment happens earlier than that. Dan thinks about the exchange in the ring. Bruce had moved before every strike was finished, sometimes before it even started. So you were predicting him? Bruce shakes his head. No. Then what? I was listening. Dan laughs. You were listening to punches? Bruce gestures with his hands. Every fighter reveals intention before they move. The shoulders tighten. The weight shifts. The eyes change. Dan considers it. So you read him. Bruce nods, and once you understand intention, the fight becomes simple. They reach a small street stall and stop for tea. The vendor pours 2 small cups of hot jasmine tea. Dan takes a sip. You know something strange? Bruce looks at him. What? You didn't look excited in the ring. Bruce smiles faintly. Why should I be? You were sparring with a national champion in front of 3,000 people. Bruce shrugs. That doesn't change the moment. Dan studies him carefully. That calm, where does it come from? Bruce answers quietly, practice. Years of it. But not just physical practice. Dan waits. Bruce takes a slow sip of tea. You must train the mind the same way you train the body. Dan nods. Most fighters don't do that. Bruce smiles. That's why they react. The rain begins falling lightly across the Bangkok street. Neon lights shimmer in the puddles. They finish their tea and continue walking toward the hotel. For several minutes, neither man speaks. Finally, Dan asks the question he's been holding back. What if he had actually landed one of those kicks? Bruce stops walking. He thinks for a moment, then answers honestly. Then I would have learned something. Dan laughs softly. You stepped into the ring with an undefeated champion just to learn? Bruce nods. That is the only reason to accept challenges. They continue walking through the warm night. The next morning, the story is already spread through Bangkok's fighting gyms. At a small training hall across the river, several Muay Thai fighters gather early. They whisper to each other, Did you see it? The Chinese man. He moved before the attacks. None of them fully understand what they witnessed. But they want to. By mid-morning, they find Bruce Lee training quietly at a small gym. He is practicing footwork alone. When the fighters enter, they bow respectfully. Bruce bows back. One of them speaks in broken English. Master Lee, can you show us? Bruce smiles politely. I am still learning myself. But he agrees to train with them. About 20 fighters gather around. Bruce steps onto the mat. No forms today, he says. No style. The fighters exchange confused looks. Bruce gestures for one of them to step forward. A young fighter throws a quick jab. Bruce shifts slightly. The punch misses. Another punch. Another miss. Bruce explains calmly. Most fighters try to block. He steps aside again as another strike passes him, but blocking still meets force with force. The fighters watch carefully. Bruce continues. Better to remove the target. For the next 2 hours, he shows them simple ideas. Distance, timing, footwork. No complicated techniques, just small movements that change everything. One of the fighters finally asks the question everyone is thinking. How do we become unbeatable? Bruce pauses, then answers quietly. Do not try to become unbeatable. The room grows silent. Try to become adaptable. The fighters bow deeply. Because they understand something important. The man teaching them yesterday stood inside Lumpini Stadium and never needed to strike. Word of the strange exhibition spreads through Bangkok within days. Not through newspapers, not through official fight records, but through gyms, through trainers, through fighters who witnessed something they could not quite explain. They tell the story again and again about the quiet Chinese man in the black shirt, about the undefeated champion who could not land a strike, about the punch that stopped 1 inch before impact. But the part they remember most is not the punch. It is the calm. Because calm in combat is rare. And when fighters see it, they never forget it. Chachai Sorprasert continues fighting for several more years. He wins many bouts, knocks out several challengers, and eventually retires with a reputation as one of Thailand's toughest fighters. But something about his style changes after that night. His students notice it during training. When aggressive opponents rush him with combinations, he no longer responds with brute force. Instead, he steps aside, redirects, controls distance. Sometimes he even smiles. Because he remembers the lesson. The moment inside Lumpini Stadium when he realized something important, that fighting is not just about power. It is about understanding. Years later, one of his students finally asks him about that night. "Is it true?" the young fighter asks. The Chinese man, Bruce Lee. Chachai sits quietly for a moment before answering. "Yes." "Did he defeat you?" The old champion shakes his head. "No." The student looks confused, but everyone says he could have. Chachai smiles slightly. That is not the point. He gestures with his hand. "That man showed me something." "What?" Chachai taps his temple. "He moved before my attacks were finished being born." The student frowns. Was he faster? The old champion shakes his head again. "No." Pause. "He was earlier." The gym becomes quiet, because fighters understand what that means. Bruce Lee himself rarely spoke about that night. He did not mention it in interviews. He never bragged about it. To him, it was simply another lesson, another moment of learning. Bruce Lee believed martial arts were not about domination. They were about expression, the honest expression of the human body. Without ego, without rigid style, without unnecessary movement, just clarity, just timing, just understanding. That philosophy eventually became the foundation of Jeet Kune Do. Not a traditional martial art, not a fixed system, but an idea. The idea that a martial artist must remain adaptable, absorb what works, discard what does not, and never allow tradition to limit growth. The night at Lumpini Stadium perfectly demonstrated that philosophy. The crowd expected a clash of styles. Muay Thai versus Kung Fu. Strength versus technique. But what they witnessed instead was something far simpler. A man who understood the moment. A man who could strike, but chose restraint. A man who showed that true mastery is not loud. It is quiet. Bruce Lee once said something that perfectly captures that lesson. He said, "Be water." Most people think that phrase means to move like water, to flow, to adapt. But water also teaches another lesson. Water does not fight the rock. It moves around it. Patient, calm, unstoppable. Until eventually the rock realizes it was never in control. And perhaps that is why the crowd in Lumpini Stadium fell silent that night. Not because they saw a spectacular fight, but because they saw something rarer, a man who could win the fight at any moment, and chose not to. Because the greatest martial artist is not the one who wins every battle. It is the one who understands when a battle is no longer necessary. So the story survives, passed from fighter to fighter, teacher to student, gym to gym. A Muay Thai champion mocked a quiet spectator. The spectator stepped into the ring, and in less than 2 minutes, 3,000 people witnessed something unforgettable. A punch that stopped 1 inch before impact. A moment of perfect control. And a lesson that would echo through martial arts history. Because true mastery is not measured by how hard you strike. It is measured by how completely you understand the moment before the strike ever happens.